unpacking today's headlines. This is Souls and Liberty in Depth.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Depth, brought to you by Souls and Liberty in partnership with MyPillow.com. Just before we begin, this week, in case you haven't been able to tell, we're launching an all-new formatting of In Depth to address post-election issues, which need much more scrutiny since that MAGA victory a month ago. The win has forced the hands of the communists on a crash deadline to disrupt and limit the scope of the victory as much as they possibly can. This was always going to be three phases. The first was the actual campaign season and the election. That's over with. Good outcome. Check. The second that we are in right now is the transition. This ends at noon on January 20th. This is where the commies are laying out their plans and signaling to their legions of followers what the approach of the disruption should be and how it should be carried out. The third phase, obviously, is the 20 months following Trump's swearing in. And we say 20 months, not 4 years, because their move will be to cripple and derail as much as possible in these 20 months as a run-up to the midterm elections, where they will then seek to gain control of either the House or the Senate or both. Look, well, big lookout. Lies, disruptions everywhere. So MAGA has a very narrow window to score huge and necessary victories in both the areas of the economy and justice. There's even talk now, chatter really, but leaked to the legacy media nonetheless, of Senate Democrats wondering if Biden should, his last minute in office, grant presidential pardons to anyone and everyone who might have justice visited on them by a Trump administration. Take a look at this headline right here. It's actually a galling concept, while at the same time exactly what you would expect from the Communist Democrats. To wit, when your attempt to subvert and destroy the republic falls just short, pack up and get out of Dodge and avoid the long arm of the law and the consequences of your years of treason. There's a narrative, in fact, shaping up among them that Biden pardoning Hunter was okay because, well, you know, it was his son. And what father wouldn't do that after all? And Trump was going to be unfair and he was going to be a meanie. So just take Hunter off the playing board, placing him out of the reach of the law. Remember, he'd already been found guilty on weapons violations, and his tax avoidance trial was just set to get underway. That Biden was also able to shield himself and his shady family crime operations by shielding his son. Well, of course, that had nothing to do with anything. So if you were shocked that he pardoned Hunter after months of flat out rejecting that, no. Will you pardon him? No. Will you grant him a pardon? No. Don't be surprised if he gets writer's cramp from signing pardons for Obama, Schiff, Hillary, Nancy, Swalwell, Schumer, Jack Smith, and so on and so on and so on, doing all of that on his last hour in office. In fact, really, based on what just happened, you should expect a floodgate to bust open between now and the inauguration. With all the chicanery fails to take into account, what it all fails to take account, however, is the vibe shift to the right. I'm doing it to my right. On your screen, it's to your right. That happened last month, recorded on Election Day, but, you know, it was really mounting for months and months before that. A good summary of that vibe shift comes from none other than Stephen Smith of ESPN. Not exactly a Trump or MAGA fan. Take a listen.
She lost 31 states. He swept the swing states, the blue states. Got 312 electoral college votes. Ladies and gentlemen, excuse my language. That is an ass whipping. That is what that is. There is no way around it, which means that there needs to be an autopsy done on a Democratic Party. Because you see, I'm not necessarily happy that Donald Trump win, but I'm a gracious loser. And more importantly than anything else, I'm about what's in the best interest of the country. And if the country decidedly picked one candidate over another, we have no choice but to pay attention to that. This wasn't some close race to be debated. They were projecting that Donald Trump was going to lose and potentially that the outcome wouldn't be decided for a minimum of 5 days and possibly as long as a week. Ladies and gentlemen, the results came in 5 hours.
Yeah, you spot on in that assessment. Even more telling was the announcement a day or so ago by New York City Mayor Eric Adams, seeing the writing on the wall and telling cancel culture to, well, putting it politely, essentially piss off.
Those who are here committing crimes, robberies, shooting at police officers, raping innocent people, have been a harm to our country. I want to sit down and hear the plan on how we're going to address them. Those are the people I am talking about, and I would love to sit down with the Board of Czar and hear his thoughts on how we're going to address those who are harming our citizens.
You're open to that?
Open to?
To hearing what their plan is to deport some of these folks, and you think the city, in some circumstances, should cooperate with ICE.
Let me. You know what's interesting? And I was talking to the team the other day. I want you to all go back and Google Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Google what they said about those who commit crimes in our city and what they said in our country. They said those who commit crimes need to get out right away. That was their position. So this is not a new position, because in the state in the era of cancel culture, no one's afraid to be honest about the truth. Well, cancel me, because I'm going to protect the people of this city. And if you come into this country, in this city, and think you're going to harm innocent New Yorkers and innocent migrants and asylum seekers, this is not the mayor you want to be in the city under.
Of course, Adams is in hot legal water of his own, and that could be playing into his newfound bravado, but this still represents a shift, even if for selfish reasons of self-preservation. Adams knows which way the wind is blowing. Whether he personally agrees with it or not, that's kind of beside the point. Doesn't really matter. He's appealing to that shift, the reality that the vibe is that the Democratic brand is severely damaged and is fundamentally seen as unfair. That's a very hard label to shake once you get it, and they got it. They got it. They own it. Of course, the shift is beginning to be felt everywhere since it's popping up everywhere. And the Trump mauling of the Harris and the machine that happened in the election, people are discovering now newfound courage to come out of the conservative closet. As Joe Rogan talked about recently. Take a listen here.
Out there's a lot of people that don't speak their mind. Do you know how many artists that have reached out to me that are like hippies, man, like artists, like musicians, comedians that thanked me for endorsing Trump because they can't do it. They said they want to, but they don't want to be attacked. They can't say it. They think the country's going in the wrong direction. They think that this control of social media by the government, which we would have had pretty much fully if it wasn't for Elon buying Twitter, that this is a dangerous precedent to set, whether it's a right-wing government or a left-wing government. And that what you see that's happening in the UK where people are being imprisoned for tweets and Facebook posts.
In the UK is the part that's mind-bending about it to me.
Mind-bending. The whole thing is nuts, and it's a dangerous path that we were on. We were on that path. Trump has vowed to have free speech become a very important part of what he's standing for, and that this censoring of information needs to stop, and that we need to stop all government influence in what people have to say.
Yeah, look,
that alone.
That shouldn't be as revolutionary as it is.
I know. It should be a core tenet of it's essentially the First Amendment.
Imagine that. Artists saying, I really want to get on the Trump train because, I found a voice. Well, it's not just headlines and legacy media and social media zeroing in on this. They're actually just responding to the MAGA movement and the total bashing of the machine it's causing. You take this to the bank. It is a revolution, whether the communists like it or not. And it is an organic revolution. That's kind of what makes a revolution, as seen in the video that we're about to show you. Look, from time to time, we're going to go to Chicago or this next video. From time to time, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson holds little feedback sessions from local residents. They're usually love-ins, because he goes to these little select audiences. Well, a meeting earlier this week was one that he likely wishes he hadn't held. he got absolutely wrecked, destroyed by residents over all the woke crap. Boom.
So I got a great way how we can what we can do with this budget. First, let's start with cutting off illegals, getting free everything. Free housing, free schooling, free food. Yeah, let's start with that. That'll save us a lot of money. What, $600 million? Let's start there. Then let's start with your salary. You are going down in history as the worst mayor in America. Let's start with cutting yours. You making too much money. Let's start there. And now let's start with the police detail you had, the 200 police detail you had. Let's start with that. Because you Democrats, and you remember you told us to defund the police. Remember, you ran on that. Remember, you was the defund the police. Let's start with that. Let's defund the police detail that you have. And let's put the police back in our neighborhood, because we're not for defunding the police. We need the police. So let's start with all the Democrats, because y'all policy, what y'all push in our neighborhood, defund the police. So all y'all that got police details and got police presence around y'all house, let's start with cutting that. That'll save a lot of money. So won't you just practice what you preach? Remove all the details. We saw you coming in today. You had all the police presence. So let's take some of that away.
Proof that all this is organic. I mean, imagine if you're Mayor Johnson, like your own people are like standing there, your own residents who vote for you, blah, blah, and they're like, you suck. You're a POS. You suck. Get rid of your cops. You don't care about us. I mean, that's all true. But to have to face the music on it, well, good. So proof that all this is organic is now emerging onto center stage. Of course, and by center stage, we mean it's not just allowable, but now becoming dominant. It's when it works its way into the lifeblood of the nation, like sports, for example. When it starts popping up everywhere that it's okay to be part of the movement, you're commies, you're in trouble. Shortly after Trump's crushing of you, teams and fans in college football, pro football, everything, well, they started doing the Trump dance. Funny thing about that Trump dance, there are people who made an appeal. The NFL needs to shut that down. Players can't be doing any of that sort of, politicizing things. And, hello, Colin Kaepernick, not taking a knee, W. I mean, give me a break, please. The NFL, feeling the heat and feeling the revolution and putting their finger up in the air and feeling, the wind's blowing this way. They said, because they'd initially opened up and said, we're going to examine whether you can do the Trump dance as a player. Well, they came back and said, yeah, you can do it if you want. That's okay. Yeah. They didn't want to run into the take a knee thing again. We mentioned all this for one reason. Besides rubbing it in their faces, which is what we really like to do, all of this speaks to the actual environment that the commies are now going to have to try and sabotage Trump in. They don't have favorable winds here. The headwinds, as a matter of fact, they don't work favorably for all at them in large. But in the specific, in the details, back there behind the curtain where they still push whatever buttons it is they want to, they have proven themselves to be extraordinarily resilient. Let's be clear here, very clear. The machine that we're talking about, the machine, the establishment, the swamp, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, it's not just commie Democrats. It's also backstabbing, lying, cheating, virtue signaling, self-interested Republicans who hold sway for the most part over the rest of the party. People like Mitch McConnell are a prime example. Since the GOP is in the majority in D.C., yet there are many anti-Trump, anti-MAGA types in the party, Trump is going to first have to blow that all up before he can make much headway. The GOP members of the swamp will grandstand and join with their communist allies across the aisle to sabotage Trump as much as possible. Why? Well, pure self-interest. They too have turned D.C. into a gravy train for themselves, of course, at the expense of you and me and everyday normal Americans who all voted for Trump, and stated simply, they don't want to see that gravy train pull into the station and them have to get off. It's just that simple. Insider trading, lobbyist money for their campaigns, personal vendettas, book deals, the whole bit. They've turned D.C. into a career just like the Democrats have. They might have some ideologies that are different, some, but in the end, they're all cashing in. So they may be a notch above the Democrats, but barely. We're already seeing all of this in the GOP response to some, if not most, of Trump's nominees. So we're going to talk about that when we come back. We're going to have a discussion on the latest subterfuge going on and what weapons Trump can deploy to fight back. He is president of the United States, after all. What can he do? We'll be right back.
Because of your overwhelming support, our $14.88 MyPillow has been one of the biggest sales in MyPillow history. I couldn't think of a better way to say thank you than to extend our wholesale pricing through Christmas. Get a classic standard MyPillow for only $14.88. Upgrade to a queen size, just $18.88. King size, only $1 more. Get my body pillows for only $29.88. And ready? Multi-use MyPillows, only $9.88. It's perfect time to stock up for Christmas gifts for everyone on your list. Go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of our wholesale pricing. Including my classic standard MyPillows, only $14.88. But that's not all. I'm so confident you're going to love our classic MyPillows that I'm going to extend my 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st, 2025. Plus, orders over $75 ship absolutely free.
Okay, welcome back. Joining us now to talk about the D.C. chicanery. Notice that word's cool word, chicanery. Sounds all cloak and dagger and stuff, because that's what it is. Anyway, here to talk about all the chicanery is fellow Souls and Liberty contributor Stephen Wynn. Stephen, welcome. You've been checking all of this out. What do you have for us, man?
Well, no surprise, the deep state has declared war on Pete Hegseth. They're trying to torpedo his nomination as Secretary of Defense. Earlier this week, NBC News published an article alleging that around a dozen or so current and former Fox News employees came to them alleging that Hegseth had appeared on set about a dozen times or so over the years, since 2017, when he became co-host of Fox and Friends on the weekend, alleging that he smelled of alcohol on set. Now, of course, these, not surprising,
inside anonymous sources, right? Inside sources.
Yeah, absolutely. They were unnamed. So, total lack of journalistic credibility there. That actually followed an article by the New Yorker published on Sunday, in which allegations basically were made that Hegseth is both a womanizer and a heavy drinker. It's just really, we'll get into this in a little bit, but it really is just typical of the left. They're trying to torpedo a good man because he is a threat to their interests, basically. But
and let's build on this point for a second. A lot of people don't realize that Hegseth, because of being nominated to be Secretary of Defense, resigned from Fox News. He is not any longer a Fox News host or has a job with Fox, doesn't get a paycheck with them or anything else. So,
and they don't care.
Yeah, I mean, why would they care? And if it was true, why wouldn't they just release a statement? Or, this 10, unnamed sources at Fox. Well, why the hell would you care if your name was mentioned? Honestly, why would you care if your name was mentioned? If he's gone, he doesn't work there anymore. I mean, you're afraid you're going to, get some sort of blowback from your fellow people. Well, if everyone at Fox is so secretly upset with Pete Hegseth, seems like you'd be a hero. To come out, with the real dope. This is just this constant, nonstop, legacy media. We've got unnamed sources. What, like Adam Schiff had unnamed sources for 3 years. This is the kind of stuff that makes you want to lose your mind. And even if it's true that he drinks a bunch or did, give me a break, please.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the whole account rings hollow. What is interesting is that a number of Hegseth's co-workers are coming out to his defense. Fox and Friends co-host Will Cain, for example, he came out. He's been sitting next to Hegseth 8 hours every week for the past 5 years. And he has said that he's gone on the record using his name, saying that the story is total horse feathers, except he didn't use the term horse feathers. Fox and Friends co-host Rachel Campos Duffy did the same thing, used the same terminology, totally denied these allegations.
And so people know how sort of vociferously they believe that. The Irish would have called it horse shite.
Yes, exactly. That's a much more accurate term than what I used.
That's yes, Gaelic exactly. For what it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing, political analyst Gianno Caldwell. He's denounced the allegations as BS and an obvious hit piece, which it is.
Yep.
And commentator Dr. Nicole Safier, she said that she's been literally sitting right next to Hegseth many times on the couch on set, and she says the only thing she's been able to detect that he consumed before coming on set was an egg salad sandwich and coffee, basically. So
that's kind of creepy. That's
exactly.
That's kind of creepy.
Yeah,
I mean, really, somebody's smelling your breath to see what you just ate, or if they're not, that they remember it. That's creepy. I mean, good for Pete, but that's kind of creepy.
It is. Yeah, it must have been pretty potent, I'd say. But yeah, so it's good to see them rallying to his defense. Trump, same thing. He called Hegseth on Wednesday and told him to keep going, keep fighting, fight, which is encouraging to see. Now, I think all of this is an indication that Pete is the right man for the job, as obviously the left is terrified of him becoming Secretary of Defense. And Hegseth himself has openly declared what he will bring to the table.
Sure.
On Wednesday, he posted to X, he said this: "I'm doing this for the war fighters, not the warmongers. The left is afraid of disruptors and change agents. They are afraid of Donald Trump and me. So they smear with fake anonymous sources and BS stories. They don't want truth." Very true there. "Our warriors never back down, and neither will I." Now, an even more interesting and direct indicator was Hegseth's own declaration of war against the woke Pentagon. He was interviewed shortly before his nomination by podcaster Sean Ryan. It was a really, really interesting interview, over 2 hours long. And during the interview, he said this. Let's take a listen.
There's a chance to course correct it, but it would take a new Trump administration going after it really hard.
How would they correct it?
Well, first of all, you got to fire you got to fire the chairman of Joint Chiefs, and you got to fire this. I mean, obviously, you're going to bring in a new Secretary of Defense, but any general that was involved, general, admiral, whatever, that was involved in any of the DEI woke shit, has got to go. Either you're in for war fighting, and that's it, and that's the only litmus test we care about. You got to get DEI and CRT out of military academies, so you're not training young officers to be baptized in this type of thinking.
I mean, that says it all, doesn't it? And now this scandal mongering is really, it's just a page out of the Marxist playbook. This has happened many times to good men and women who have been nominated for high positions of power, who threaten the interests of the deep state. The Democrats did this in 1987 with Supreme Court nominee Robert Bork, who was a faithful Catholic, but because of that, he threatened basically the interest of the abortion industry. They viewed him as a threat to Roe v. Wade, And so they came out with guns blazing, trying to kill his nomination. And unfortunately, they were successful in that.
Yeah, not on
They
that on that score, just for viewers who either are like going, oh yeah, I kind of remember that, or people aren't aware of it. That really was the very first kind of full scale, open, public attack on this. Now that was for a Supreme Court seat. This is for a nomination, but what it's done is it sort of converted the Senate. It was Ted Kennedy who led that charge against him with his famous, Robert Bork's America, blacks will be relegated to the back of the bus. In a Robert Bork America, and he just kept going on and on. It's all pure garbage, all of it. Again, crazy, poorly catechized or rejecting Catholics, Joe Biden with Clarence Thomas, all of it always seems to be the same pattern here. That Bork got so horribly mistreated. It was just horrible to sit and watch. I remember those thinking, I was cringing while they were going on. It was just awful stuff. And, and I think part of the deal here is when you look at, people like him and others who've undergone all of this kind of stuff, Bork really got caught completely off guard. He was blindsided by all of that. And while he was ticked, obviously, the sort of mounting his self-defense wasn't something, against such a, bald-faced pack of lies. I think it's something he was really equipped for. And it really set the tone for Senate confirmation hearings of anybody who posed a threat to the established order, whether it was the establishment, whether it was, pet projects of the establishment like abortion, and so forth. You touch that third rail and they tear you to shreds in the Senate. It's just what they do now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned Clarence Thomas, for example. I mean, just 4 years later, in 1991, his nomination was almost scuttled. With Bork and Kennedy, they threw out concerns about the welfare of African Americans. Well, they didn't particularly care about Clarence Thomas's welfare. He's African American. The key was to their opposition was he's a faithful Catholic who is firmly pro-life. And again, as you said, they saw that as a threat to Roe v. Wade, and so they tried to totally destroy his nomination with allegations of sexual harassment. Now, thankfully, Thomas survived that assault, and praise be to God, he went on. He's still on the court today. He went on to help overthrow Roe v. Wade 2.5 years ago, and the same thing happened in 2018.
Hold on a second, Stephen. I have a personal news story on the Clarence Thomas stuff.
Sure.
So at that time, in 91, I was a reporter at the CBS station in Detroit, and everybody, of course, was standing around watching not the hearings, obviously, but then it came to the day of the vote, and everybody's standing there around all the monitors in the newsroom watching, the vote and the tally from C-SPAN, 48 to 41 and blah, 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 blah. And when it finished up at 52 to 48, which was kind of what it had predicted to be, that he was going to win. It was just the margin was going to be by 2 or 3 or maybe 4. Turned out to be 4. What was interesting there is in the newsroom, and this is just show the bias in the media all the way back. In the newsroom, people I worked with, the executive producer was standing out there, the news director was standing out there, the senior executive producer they were all standing out there, and everybody's just standing there with their arms folded looking up at the monitors. And, and when it happened, that's it. You get Senate confirmation. It's over. Unless you die, you get sworn in and life goes on. The immediate reaction out of our assistant news director, her name was Carla Gaines, the immediate reaction was, there's a way to overturn that and appeal that, isn't there? There's what about the appeal process? And I just looked at her, probably not a good career move. I just looked at her and said, no, a Senate confirmation is that. It's a confirmation. He's confirmed. That's it. Now they just swear him in. Boy, she shot me daggers. And I'm like, well, what, really? I mean, you're going to ask a basic, almost civics question like that? Like, is there a way, the Senate just voted. Well, if the Senate votes and they confirm, you think there's some sort of trip mechanism to turn around and take a second vote, like immediately? Who would you be appealing to? The Senate has the final confirmation authority. So it's just to, help sort of fill in some of the crevices and, show the fullness, the richness of the tapestry of how this has all worked. Media, legacy media, even on the local news level, has been part of the establishment. It wouldn't have called it the swamp or, any of that back in, the deep state or anything back in, the early 1990s. But that's what it was. What it was called doesn't really matter. A stinky rose by any other name is still a stinky rose. But, I just kind of like bringing some of these personal encounters with all of this to, sort of fill in some of the blanks here. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
No, not at all. No, I think that's great. It just shows how committed she was to not being a journalist and instead promoting abortion. And the same thing is true with Hegseth. He won't have any impact on abortion, but he is a threat to the military-industrial complex, which we've been warned about since 1960.
He's a big threat. A big threat. 100%.
Absolutely. And so, of course, the left fear him. And I'll be honest, yes, I'm an observant Catholic, and, I do believe, morality, moral behavior is important. But you know what? Even if the allegations of him, partying a bit too much, even if those are true, I would much, much rather have Hegseth than the nuts Biden has installed. Let's review some of those. For example, our current Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin. Here we see him inspiring confidence and lifting morale during a review of our troops a few years ago. He has been likened to Darth Vader, and I think it's exactly what it looks like. It's just a bizarre display. Austin, of course, is responsible for injecting all sorts of woke crap into the military, the DEI nonsense, the trans garbage, all of that. He's largely responsible for infecting, I would say, not just injecting, but infecting the U.S. military with that ideology. And now I want to point out the hypocrisy of Democrats here, okay? In its article on Sunday, the New Yorker quoted Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal as saying,
also known as Skeletor.
There's a theme developing here, isn't there?
Darth Vader, Skeletor, the Emperor. It all kind of.
Exactly. Well, Senator Blumenthal, he came out and said, Hegseth, he dismissed him as completely unqualified. And this is the reason he gave. It's dangerous. The Secretary of Defense is involved in every issue of national security. He's involved in the use of nuclear weapons. He's the one who approves sending troops into combat. He approves drone strikes that may involve civilian casualties. Literally, life and death issues are in the hands of the Secretary of Defense. And entrusting these kinds of issues to someone who might be incapacitated for any reason is a risk we cannot take. Now,
I smell where this is going.
Right. Exactly,
First of all, that's not true. The Secretary of Defense just doesn't decide unilaterally to start launching missiles somewhere. He fulfills the president's, mission. He may be the guy who says, okay, push the button now, but he doesn't do that. That's not where that buck stops. That buck stops in the Oval Office. Blumenthal's completely full of crap there.
Yeah, total distortion. But it's even funnier when you recognize the hypocrisy. Blumenthal is the same guy backing our current Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, who a year ago went AWOL for a week or more, basically disappearing completely out of sight, out of contact for a medical procedure, with no one in the Biden administration knowing where he was.
They didn't even know he was gone.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't even know he was missing. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think that got revealed that they didn't know where he was. I think that got revealed in a Pentagon press briefing. Like somebody asked, I can't remember the Pentagon spokesperson's name right now, but somebody asked him, hey, has Secretary of Defense Austin, blah blah blah, and somehow in that it came out, they're like, well, what do you mean you don't know where he is? His own staff didn't know where he was. Biden, who doesn't know much, but you'd figure to at least know that, yeah, he's in the office across the street there behind his desk. He didn't even know that. Nobody knew where he was. It wasn't just he was absent. It was he was absent without leave and no one knew where he was.
Yeah, completely out of contact. And the fact that the New Yorker, which is a quote unquote respected publication, journalistic enterprise, the fact that they didn't call Blumenthal on that quote asking, well, what about Austin? It really, it's like your example back in 1991. It just shows how agenda driven the mainstream press is. It's absolutely disgusting. And it's why they are losing the trust of average, ordinary Americans.
I'd even go so far as to say they actually have lost the trust. It's not a question of just losing it, which, of course, continues to happen. But there was a poll that came out, survey that came out. It's a regular, I think it's every 6 months, might be annual, but anyway, the point is it goes back a very long time to like the 1970s. It's not a Gallup poll. I can't remember who it is that actually produces. It was the same poll. The trust in the media right now, which is important in all of this because that media is going to be the bullhorn, so to speak, getting smaller, bullhorn for all of this opposition. To everything Trump's doing and all his nominees and the whole bit. That bullhorn, the legacy media, now has an 11% rating. Only 11% of U.S. adults actually trust the legacy media. That's why MSNBC is being sold. That's why CNN, doesn't have ratings that Newsmax has anymore. All of these things matter. So, when senators are trying to pull their stuff and say this, and they're on all of these shows, and people notice all these clips that we run, not all, but a large majority of these clips we run, these clips are from legacy media because they can't go on social media because they'll get torn to shreds because they're full of crap. So again, it's that vibe shift. And here's an example of it playing out. Doesn't mean they're not going to try. I mean, they're still going to, they want headlines out there and, Trump sucks and, whatever, the headline after headline, because people do see headlines, but it's extremely dishonest of them. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, 100%.
So I'm having a struggle with my earpiece. It won't stay in. I hate this earpiece.
No problem.
By the way, I have to ask you, because I'm sure our viewers are wondering, complete sidebar here. We're taking off ramp. I need to ask you. So I have before me here a notification that once again you are going to be appearing in the annual Kansas City Santa Claus lookalike contest. Is there any truth to that, Stephen?
Well, that's news to me. I'll have to investigate that further. I will say that's not the first time I've heard such allegations. So, speaking of allegations.
Well, it's quoted right here on MSNBC, just telling you.
Well, legacy media, they're garbage.
Yeah.
But
only 11% trustworthy. By the way, if you look at that 11, get back on the freeway here, that 11%, if you've got roughly 32, 33% of the country as registered Democrats, that means most Democrats also don't trust the legacy media.
Yeah, right.
Where they fall on the spectrum, like they would never trust them ever again, or, they highly doubt them or whatever. But the point is, you can't have just 11% trust and not have encompassed an enormous number of Democrats in that as well.
No, absolutely. And yet they still voted for Kamala. It boggles the mind. It really does. Especially when you see more examples of the lunacy. Lloyd isn't the only star of the Biden-Harris freak show. There is, of course, as we see here,
good name,
Rachel
freak
Levine.
That's being
Rachel
kind.
Levine, AKA Richard Levine, Biden's Assistant Secretary for Health. We see him here. Enough said, as far as I'm concerned. And let's not forget, of course, Sam Brinton, the cross-dressing former Department of Energy staffer and a former member, I might add, of anti-Catholic hate group, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. He was forced to resign in disgrace after he was caught stealing luggage. Now, not surprisingly, he faced up to 20 years in prison for grand larceny, but not surprisingly, he got a sweetheart deal. Prosecutors were able to negotiate his, or I guess his defense team was able to negotiate the charges from a felony to misdemeanor. And so literally the only penalty he got was he had to perform 50 hours of community service and write a letter of apology. So
I wonder if somebody tipped him off as the bags were going along the carousel there at the airport. Wonder if somebody tipped him off that there was some very expensive lingerie in that bag.
there had to be something. I mean, really, it's lunacy. You know, you're a well-paid government employee with status, and you throw your career away for that. It's just, I don't know, it's insane. And those are just three examples. There are all kinds of other lunatics in the current administration, and so again, if Hegseth likes to drink every now and then, and not excusing that, so to the point of drunkenness, and not excusing that, but I'm going to be pragmatic here, and I'm going to say I prefer that to what we have now. I just do.
Well, let's look at this. As you said earlier, there's not a purity test going on here. Yeah, you don't want people who are, criminals. And in case somebody's watching this, goes, "Oh, Donald Trump's convicted 34 times." First of all, the appeal on that hasn't been fully adjudicated, and secondly, it was all trumped up crap. He stole. Sam Brinton stole luggage. I mean, nobody is questioning any of the facts of it. The facts of the Trump indictments and all of that have been questioned from the moment they were, even thought about. But yeah, I mean, nobody wants to have a criminal sitting in some high-powered, position of, some sort, in the government. That said, we're not talking about criminality here. We're talking about somebody who may or may not. I mean, the very fact that his coworkers came out and identified themselves by name and said, "Nope, I'm sat here next to him. All I can smell is egg salad and coffee." Weird.
And she was a doctor. She would know the signs of inebriation. Just with her training.
And the other thing, look, the social media, the internet is forever, right? Where are the videos of him trashed on the air? Where are they?
Absolutely. Exactly. Of all the times I've ever seen Hegseth, I've never seen him looking drunk or even hungover. I certainly can't say the same thing about Nancy Pelosi or Kamala Harris. Multiple times you look at them and you think, what is going on there?
Yeah. It's the other thing, going back to the, I know it's a little bit of sort of whataboutism, but look, you can venture into the world of whataboutism when the other team comes after you. I mean, you just can't point at somebody and say, "Hey, this is a bad something or other," or whatever, and just leave it there. When you say, you suck, and you're not qualified, and you're not whatever moral enough, or whatever the argument is, you can't say that if you've got the skeleton in your closet. It's not even in the closet; it's right out there in public. Really, Richard Levine, really, Lloyd Austin, who just disappears. The president of the United States. I mean, it's hard to kind of even ingest this like intellectually. The president of the United States had no idea where his Secretary of Defense was. The same Secretary of Defense who was a key figure in the Afghanistan disaster. He should never have been allowed. He should have just been gotten rid of. Donald Trump said to Biden, remember on the stage, and he said it again to, Kamala in their debate too. Nobody ever gets fired from, it just doesn't matter what you do. You just keep your job forever. And I think that's part of the whole, again, it's that whole shift. There's never any consequences to this. And, what's happened to military recruiting under Lloyd Austin? Hit the crapper. They haven't been, in 4 years. They haven't been able to get to the level that they're supposed to be getting to. They come up short tens of thousands in recruitment after recruitment after recruitment. Who's going to look at Darth Vader there and go, "Yeah, I want to go die under his command"?
Well, exactly. There's a very interesting, if you dig a little deeper, there's a very interesting component to that. Female military recruitment has stayed roughly the same for the past 11 or so years. It's male recruitment that has plunged.
Yeah.
And there are many, many people who look at the numbers, and I mean, we're talking thousands and a shortfall of thousands and thousands of recruits. And they're attributing that to the DEI garbage, the trans crap, all of that. Who wants to go fight to defend insanity? Strong young men are willing to literally lay down their lives, to sacrifice everything to defend their country, but not if that's what their country represents. And we see that more and more.
Yeah, I mean, there's great memes all over the internet of the D-Day landings and stuff like that, and then it's like these dual shots, like the D-Day landings, and then they'll show, some like purple hair crazy, lady army recruit or whatever, and the caption, something along the lines of, "This is what we stormed the beaches at Normandy for, to defend this."
Right.
And along those lines also, there's not just a question of numbers in the military. And why are we talking about all this? Because Lloyd Austin, this all drops at his feet. I mean, ultimately it drops at Biden's feet because he's appointed him and then kept him in there after the Afghanistan disaster and everything else. But, the direct hands-on thing is him. Lloyd Austin has been, personally responsible for the drop in military recruitment. And then on top of it, the quality of the recruits that are actually allowed in. They've lowered the standards across the board for the number of, push-ups you need to do and all the physical demands of everything. And, and you look across the board, for example, the Butler, Pennsylvania shooting, you saw all those pictures of FBI agents. Secret Service agents, overweight, didn't know what was going on. Again, DEI hires. And, there's a reason corporate America is dropping all of their DEI and their woke stuff. People hate it. It doesn't work. It does damage to morale. It, eats into profits because you've hired idiots who don't know the job and don't really care to know the job. So if corporate America is responding that way, and private America is responding that way, and Main Street is responding that way, again, it's the vibe shift has moved. They're like, this is crap. And yet, here sits the Democratic Party with the communists still, oh, no, we have to do this. You have to be a purple-haired transgender who wants to transition on the U.S. taxpayers' dime in military service at a hospital in Germany to have you-know-what cut off, and then all the, in therapy or whatever it is that goes on, rehab or whatever that goes on afterwards. I mean, this is the stuff. It's interesting on one of the phone calls, the Harris autopsy phone calls. I've had a few of them, but on one of them, it came out that ad that Trump put out on social media, the campaign put out on social media, talking about Harris defending trans surgery for illegal immigrants in prison. I mean, that checked 3 boxes. And it was massively effective. And of course, and they're saying, this has only happened once. It doesn't matter. It didn't matter if it hadn't happened at all. That's not the point. There she is, the future president of the United States, trying to be, saying, oh, absolutely. Not only do I think it's right, but I, as the California Attorney General, I stepped forward and made sure that this could happen and you could get the necessary medical care. And she's pounding her chest over her victory of this. I mean, you talk about tone deaf. That's beyond tone deaf. I mean, that's like you're dead. And everybody's saying, boy, what was wrong with that woman? And, it's revolting, really, the degree that they are out of touch. But, as I was saying in the first part of the show, that mentality still has its hands on some, maybe most of the levers of power. This is the part that we've been talking about, Stephen, and when we were doing in depth during the campaign and election and everything, that anybody who thinks they're going quietly into the night, they were gobsmacked. Absolutely. It took them, a few days to kind of, oh my gosh, what did we do wrong? Blah, blah, blah. Since then, they've doubled down on everything. And the Hegseth example you've gone into in detail, it's a prime example. It's a prime example. Who was it? I think the Wall Street Journal, in the last 24 hours or something, came out with a thing saying, Trump is now, backpedaling or reconsidering, Hegseth's nomination because all of the blowback, and he's looking at DeSantis, and governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. We saw something of that in the Matt Gaetz deal. They're not dead. This is the very important point. The left and the commie Dems are not dead. The swamp is going to try to exact its revenge. And this is why what we're doing here at Souls and Liberty, that's why this is so important. That's why this continually keeps happening. That we, others, these discussions have to keep going. It's actually going to be more of an uphill climb during, as I said in the beginning of the show, phase 2, the transition here, and then phase 3, the 20 months or so after that, as we get, 3 or 4 months before the midterms, by the summer or Labor Day of 2026, all of everything they've done, all these time bombs they've planted all over the place, their headlines they keep generating. Doesn't matter if most people don't trust them. They get into the bloodstream. Your thoughts on all that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You mentioned the D-Day invasion earlier. I think it's telling that really that was just the beginning of the battle to reclaim Europe. There were 100,000 U.S. troops, just U.S. troops alone, who died between June 1944 and the fall of Berlin, and that doesn't count French troops, British troops, et cetera. So there's a lot of fighting ahead, and it's going to be an intense battle, because this isn't the woke left. Really is, it's akin to a religious cult. They fight with the fervor of cultists. It's lunacy. It's not just long gone are the days of debates over tax brackets and all of that. We still discuss that, but these issues are much deeper, and they're rooted spiritually, basically. And as a result, we see the true believers, people with the purple hairs and blue hairs, as you say. We see them fighting tooth and nail to preserve their agenda, their vision for America, their vision for the world. And Christian conservatives, but Christians and Catholics especially, have got to rise to the challenge and meet them with even greater commitment, dedication, and just basically a vision of winning, holding out to the end, fighting, pushing it back, etc. Now, I'm glad that so many Democrats seem to be wedded to this vision, because it flies in the face of common sense, of natural virtue. That's why we won the election. It just, even unchurched Americans have been watching the headlines, looking at television, looking at the news, and they may not know a lot about Jesus, but they certainly can recognize, because it is very plain to see, that something is deeply wrong in this country. And so they responded. Thankfully, enough of them had goodwill. They responded accordingly, and we won the day on November 5th. But yes, moving forward, we're going to have to keep up the momentum, and included in that, I think we need to be praying daily for Trump's safety. Over the span of a couple of months, he was two assassination attempts. Well, there's nothing saying that won't be tried again, because he's not just fighting the Democrats. You pointed out, you mentioned the broader deep state. There are Republicans, far too many Republicans, who are allied with the deep state, part of it, et cetera. I was reading that Currently, there are, I think, 6 undecided senators, Republican senators,
Yep.
undecided on Hegseth's nomination. And if all 6 vote no, he will not be confirmed. And
on that point, Stephen, about these confirmations happening or not happening, I think Trump just, a couple of things. He's not sworn in yet. On January 20th, I think he should just take the oath in the Oval Office, just have Chief Justice Roberts come in there, get a few witnesses that it's happened, have the White House photographer release some pictures, and off you go. We don't need this big party and all these balls and galas and all of that. Just get to work.
Yes.
We've been there, done that. It was wonderful. It was, the case, you avoid any possible assassination attempt or some crazy, or, I don't know, they'd even be able to get anywhere near him in that setting. But just go to work, show up at the White House at, 11:58, say, bye, Joe, take off, Jill, take care of him now. Get him. It's time for tapioca. I'll take over. Thanks. Hey, Chief Justice, how you doing? Okay. Yes. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear, blah, blah, blah. Thanks. Appreciate it. Got a picture. Go. And at 12:03, sit down and sign all those executive orders and get on with it. All of the normal stuff that goes along here. These aren't normal times. I really wish he would do that. He probably won't. But I really wish that he would do that. It just seems to me to be very reflective of the state of the country right now. He's a businessman, bringing business principles to running the government, putting people around him. And quite frankly, if he is essentially on one level, if he's kind of the CEO of the country, it's kind of a bit of an odd way to think about it, but if he's the CEO, he should get to hire his top management team, whoever it is. And if voters don't like it, vote him out. Come the next election cycle, hand Congress over to, the Democrats, do whatever. But if they don't let him if this Senate deep swamp crap doesn't, if I were him, I'd say, screw off. I'm appointing them in recess. And that's it. These are recess appointments. We're cleaning up America and you guys are it. I really think that's what he should do.
Yeah. I think this Hegseth nomination, this really is a line in the sand. Gates was one thing. I wasn't happy about how that turned out, but this really is a line in the sand. I think that, if he's rejected, or if Trump walks away and appoints DeSantis, okay, I'm an admirer of DeSantis, but I don't know what he would do in that position. Hegseth, as we listened to the clip earlier, we know what he'll do. He's going to fire the idiots, basically, who are in command, who have been leading our soldiers astray, demoralizing them, defunding them, weakening this country militarily. And that's exactly what's needed. I mean, this is the reason America is what it is, and that we remain free is specifically because of that department, because of that Army, that Navy, that Air Force, those Marines. If all of that continues to unravel, to decline, I don't see a lot of hope for us. China's in the ascendancy. Russia is saber rattling constantly, ever more so with Biden's missteps. So they need to clean house at the Pentagon. I know Hegseth will do that, and this is no time for Republicans to play politics. And if they do, Trump just needs to annihilate them politically, end their careers, basically. Do whatever he needs to do. Obviously not violence, but just get them out.
Or
There's
maybe
all kinds of
violence.
things.
Little violence sprinkled here and there.
Yeah.
No, we haven't put together a list yet of the senators and congressmen, but specifically the senators because of the length of the terms. We haven't done that yet. You, me, and the other folks here said to say, who are all the Republican senators who are up for re-election in 2026 in the midterms? Which ones are the bad ones, and which ones need to be primaried? And are they senators, Republican senators in blue states, like Susan Collins, for example, in Maine, or are they Republican senators in red states who just suck and they're part of this whole deep state thing? And if you primary them out, that would be taken over by a MAGA red state Republican senator. Who are those guys? That's going to be an exercise. It's a little too early right now. Let's see how all these votes go and what the responses are and everything around those lines. I mean, if they fall in the line and vote correctly, okay. I mean, you'd rather them not be there, maybe primary them anyway. But if they thwart the will of, 78 million people now that have voted for Trump, if they thwart that will, and that included this. I mean, you just vote for Trump. You vote for all of the entire administration he brings in, all the federal appointees, everything. He was saying, he introduced Kash Patel a couple of times, on his rallies. He said, hey, Kash, get up here. What do you think of, what do you think of this guy's the FBI director? I mean, he said everything he's going to do. So it's not like he, bluffed his way in and, said, well, I'm going to, do some bipartisan and have Lisa Murkowski be the Secretary of Education and then, rip the carpet out from that. He said everything he was going to do. He was his open book and said, this is what we're going to do. So people voted for him. Sure, they voted for, an attitude and, lower egg prices and all that sort of stuff. They also voted for this as well. And for U.S. senators, Republican U.S. senators, to go on the record and vote against this and endanger it or defeat one of these nominations, on the Senate floor, I think he's that guy or woman, the first opportunity, that person needs to be completely, sorry, my earpiece here is giving me all kinds of hell. That person needs to be defeated in the primaries. It's just that simple. If they can be defeated, they need to be defeated. And I don't think you can worry about from a political strategy. I mean, yeah, the head count in the Senate matters. So you would want it going from, a rhino Republican into the hands of a blue, but only because of the head count. If at the end of the day, stuff like that happens and you're able to go into red states that have blue Democratic senators in them and swap them out too, and you swap them out with somebody who's a reliable vote, as a political strategy, that's worth it. We just haven't sat down yet because it's still premature. Let's see how all the votes go and all of that. But then it'll be like, okay, where's the hit list? Because they're on, they're on the enemy's hit list. A rhino Republican, is absolutely on the hit list just as much as a Democrat in a red state is. They need to go. Rhino Republicans voted in lockstep favor practically for every one of Joe Biden's nominees. Every one of his cabinet positions, they voted in favor of Lloyd Austin and, Merrick Garland. They had their little, perfunctory, well, Mr. Garland, when you were, this, I do see something here that when you were in third grade, there's a report that you looked on to Sally's paper and may have copied something she said. Is that true? Oh, no, it's not true. Okay, thank you. You have my vote. It's that kind of crap. And people are sick to death of that. So, yeah, and every one of these rhinos, right along with the deep state. Merrick Garland was a product of the deep state. That's why Obama nominated him for the high court. It's all a piece. How's it go? A part of a piece of a part. It's all piece of a part, and it all needs to be blown up and bulldozed. All of it, not recklessly, with a plan, but the plan needs to be put in place. And the first part of it is get rid of these losers, both rhinos and Dems.
Yeah. In many ways, I think the rhinos are even more dangerous than the Democrats because things have polarized so much. We know where the Democrats stand. Most of them have cast their lot with the woke left. A few, Tulsi Gabbard, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Trump himself, have come over and embraced the GOP. But you have these, like you said, Senator Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski in Alaska. They wear this half mask of being standing for strong American values, being for fiscal responsibility, even as they vote us into war after war, to the edge of bankruptcy. We're not talking about lesser issues here, corn subsidies or whatever. Those are important. But I mean, we're talking about the life of the nation. Right. And if they choose, if they cast their lots with the architects of this nation's unraveling, they have to go. They absolutely have to go.
Absolutely.
This is
They
the
really should be gone already. I mean, that's it.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah.
They're simply not reliable. That's it. Every now and then they might vote right, like Susan Collins, voted for Kavanaugh and gave that big grandiose speech in the well of the Senate, during his confirmation proceedings, and was like, "Well, I do believe." Please. It was Christine Blasey Ford crap. That was insane. That even came up. And here we go again now. This is their weapon of choice. Find somebody, usually a woman, who's going to complain, and say that they were sexually assaulted or whatever. I mean, the whole Matt Gaetz thing. Remember that? That wasn't, that was a claim. The woman was drunk down at the bar, met Matt Gaetz, the hotel bar, met Matt Gaetz, went upstairs with him. Stop. Full stop. You're drunk and you go upstairs with the guy. And then you're going to say, "Oh, I was raped." Really? Your husband was on 2 floors below in the room that you guys had. Is there a question at that point that what you're saying is true? Sure, there's a question what you're saying is true. How many women have been involved in a situation like that, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, I was raped"? Why were you drunk at a bar with your husband up in his room, up in your guy's room? Why were you drunk at a bar, and why did you go upstairs? Nobody testified or came out and said that Matt Gaetz drugged you and took you up to his room and you were, compliant and, out of your mind. This is their thing. They try to get things out. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out in the media now, because that's how they've done it before. Every single media outlet was boom, right on the story, and they wiped out, nominee after nominee or appointee or whatever it was, or raised enough hell to be able to point back to it as though it was some factual thing, like Kavanaugh, for example, or Amy Coney Barrett is, some radical Catholic, and she can't be anywhere near the bench or the levers of power. This is what they do. They smear, they detract, they lie. They have the media to do it. The key difference this time is they no longer have control of the media. So it'll be interesting to see how all of this plays out. Steve, we're going to wrap up for right now, but we are, as we said at the top of the show, we're in phase 2 now, the period between November 5th and January 20th. This is the transition that we see going on right now, and we're going to see how it all plays out. Both sides are prepping for a full-on assault, which begins on J20. Stephen, thanks, brother. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, before we leave you, a little levity. Humor oftentimes is the kind of, sort of softer, gentler, kinder way of getting the truth across, and sometimes even more destroying and destructive of the enemy than a blunt approach. To that end, the hypocrisy of the commies over the Hunter pardon by Joe has become the source of all sorts of memes and jokes. Take a look at this one right here. It's you get to notice the squirrel is the one introducing it to you. It's very it's quite funny. It's quite funny. Anyway, Adam Schiff in 2018 suggested pardoning a president's son could be an effort to obstruct justice. Ooh, there's Adam Schiff, the high moral man himself, who had sex with an intern of his, a male intern of his, and then when they had to do a payout, paid out of the Congressional Slush Fund. Where's that story? Anyway, that meme you just see drives home the point. They're masters at moving the goalposts. That's what they do. Pardoning your son is an obstruction of justice if you're Donald Trump. But, if you're Joe Biden, hey, come on, man. It's just his son, man. Schiff will be one of the guys begging for a presidential pardon before Joe exits the White House. And he's likely going to need it. That's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. Let us know what you think of the new expanded and informational format. And please consider a donation to our work here at Souls and Liberty. Like everyone, we have bills to pay, and we think what we bring you is really good and thoughtful. And it really is for you. It's intended to be one-stop shopping each day. So thank you in advance for your generosity. Coming to you from Houston, Texas, I'm Gary Michael Voris. God love you.